back.
And we are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here in the city we love, the city of 1,000 stories, the naked city, of course, Providence, Rhode Island, broadcasting here at 90 Way Bassett Street. For the record, the last 5 minutes of broadcasting, I meant every single freaking word of it. But joining me in studio is one of my good friends, someone I'm proud to join on the field of battle with. She's a warrior. She is the goddess of all acronyms, basically involved in just about every single aspect of fighting the man, as we say here in Rhode Island. Of course, she's with the Center for Freedom and Prosperity. Monique Chartier, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me, Pat.
Back to the coalition. This is, what we're going to talk about tonight is an annual event, and that is the report card that the Center for Freedom and Prosperity issues for the denizens of Halitosis Hall.
Yes, but there is one new development this year, and that it is being issued by the Gatsby Project.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the Gatsby Project, explain, if you will, the relationship between the Gatsby Project and the center.
There really is no relationship. They are two totally different entities.
Okay.
So one of them is a 501c3, that's the center, and that's educational. The Gaspee Project is a 501c4, so that's much more political, and that's why the decision was made to transfer the scorecard to the Gaspee Project.
Okay. How many years has this been?
The Gaspee Project?
No, the report card.
The scorecard has existed for 5 years, years, and it is still the center that generates it, but it's the Gaspee Project that has released it this year.
All right, great. So let's talk about the scorecard. How do you rate things? What's the methodology?
So basically, it's at the very base of it. It's whether a bill it scores bills that are presented and voted on Smith Hill. So whether the bill, to what extent it promotes or curbs freedom. So freedom, in terms of how much money they take or how much regulation is put, because the Gatsby Project is the voice of taxpayers and small businesses. So we want to hold legislators accountable for how much freedom they have given or curbed. And this is the way to do it. So each bill is ranked either by a -3 all the way up to a +3 as to how much freedom it takes away or promotes. And then so according to that, each legislator is given a score on the basis of how strong the bill is in terms of freedom, and then whether they voted for or against it.
So an example, and I don't know if it's possible to pull this out of your activist hat here, but what's a bill that might have been at the high end of the scale in promoting freedom? Was there any one piece of legislation?
I'm drawing a blank. I'm not sure that there was one. That's a very good question. I pass that as that. Your Honor, I'd like to get back to you on that if I could.
All right, Ms. Vito. There really weren't any bills that actually helped.
I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. There probably were, but I'm drawing a blank.
No, I don't think there actually were any bills that helped. And of course, my libertarian friends would tell me that the notion that legislation could promote freedom at any level is, in fact, disingenuous to even assume.
That's an interesting point.
Right. Libertarians, we are interesting. So who is the big winner this year? Who has been, and this is, by the way, this is across both Senate and House.
Yes, it is. That's right. All legislators. So it's actually it's sort of the preliminary stage, because, as you know, the vast majority of the legislation is voted on in the last 2 weeks of the session.
Right. So this will be updated. Yeah.
Yes,
actually, the last
updated.
2 hours of the session.
The mad dash at the end.
The catering companies are restocking the maraschino cherries and the vermouth right now as we speak.
Exactly, as Joe Trillo so infamously said, and this is when the dead will walk. The bills that we thought were dead will start to walk the halls and suddenly pop up instantly in committee, pass committee, and get thrown onto the floor and voted on.
Right.
In a very poor demonstration, let's say seriously, of democracy in action.
Right, and so, and one must remember as an aside that the paw socks, as I always use the analogy, much like Glenn Close coming out of the bathtub in Fatal Attraction, are still out there.
Now that is a bill, right? That's a bill that's haunting currently in the current session, right?
Depends who you talk to.
Oh.
I mean, there's allegedly legislation been presented, and we've been told by our leaders. Yeah, I was going to use the word trust, but yeah, not so much. We've been told by our leaders that because of the expense and the controversy surrounding it, that they might engender a special session, but we really don't know, do we?
No, that's very true. That's very true. It could easily pop up at the last minute. Yeah, you're right. That's right. So they've assured us that they're going to go to a special session later in the summer, but we never know. All the rules are suspended during this time, which is not good. So anything could happen.
Right. So who's the big winner? Well, let's.
Well, I can give you who's on top and who's on bottom at this point.
I'll just say, depending on the type of person I am, Tony, am I the person to focus on the positive or the negative?
Definitely the bottom of the class.
Yes, all right, who sucks? Okay, let's take the House first. Because ultimately, folks, we'll give you a little civics lesson ongoing here, a little civics intervention. The House is the chamber that generates the budget.
Yes.
The one that's going to affect your life the most.
Exactly.
So who's the bottom dweller?
So at this point, again, this is preliminary and this is going to change, but as of earlier this week, at the bottom of the House in terms of being on the scorecard, Rep. Carol Hagan-McEntee was at the bottom of the score.
Oh, Carol. Carol, we hardly knew you.
But that could change because there are lots of votes that now have to be added to the scorecard as they are taken.
Was there a cluster, if you will, at the bottom, or was she really?
I didn't look that far. I apologize. There were sad to say there are far more people, legislators that are in the negative than there are in the positive score section.
Who is at the top in the House? So
in the House, it's Rep. Mike Chippendale at the top.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And was he by a, was it by a long shot, or is he?
I think it was fairly close, but again, there's going to be a lot of bills that are going to get added to this, so this could definitely change, and there could be distances put.
So, Carol, there's still time.
There is. That's right.
There's
that's
time.
Correct.
You can write this wrong. You can do the right thing. How many were in the? Do you have a handle on how many were in the positive?
Not a lot. Let's see. I think we said. Let's see. Only 16 of 112 lawmakers currently have total scores above 0.
0.0. Are all the Republicans at the top of that?
I'm sorry, I didn't go into that
Okay.
much. I apologize.
Okay. Yep. All right. So then on the Senate, let's
Yes.
talk about the Senate.
Yes. So at the bottom of the Senate is Senator James Doyle. However, I will say that we just rank them regardless of chamber, and there are a lot of representatives who have a much worse score than Senator James Doyle. So he's not the worst in the building.
Mm-hmm. And who came out tops?
Senator Elaine Morgan is at the top currently. Again, that could change as all these bills get added in.
No, but she is a warrior for
for freedom, I would say.
And she has been focused heavily on everything from the tolls to the attempt to develop yet another state truck stop down in South County. She's been aggressively fighting that.
Yeah.
So is there going to be an Oscar-like presentation?
No,
we will.
No, we will we'll update the scores, and then we'll issue another statement, advising the public what the final score is for all the legislators.
It'd be interesting to see also, if I can do an informational request, what legislation was either highly egregious, or what legislation that people passed on or vote supported that would have been freedom-inducing, if you will.
Yes.
It would be interesting to get a reflection on that, so we can understand the methodology.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did pull out some of the -3 bills.
Okay.
So, for example, let's see, so one of the top ones is paid leave. The feeling is that Rhode Island business climate is already very, very bad, and to add yet another mandate.
Give folks a little background on that, because there's been a lot of sturm und drang on that.
Yes.
But as is so typical from the mainstream media, they like to handicap things as opposed to explain it. So are you familiar with the paid leave law?
Somewhat,
Right.
yes. And I believe there was a compromise, which, by the way, was negotiated apparently by the Northern Rhode to negotiate on behalf of all businesses in the state, because I can assure you that most businesses in the state do not support paid leave. But the way it works is, at first, every so many days worked throughout the year, the employee would get paid leave, would receive paid leave. This is done without regard to whether the business can afford it, as so many other anti-business mandates that have been passed in the past have happened. And so over the decades, Rhode Island now has one of the worst business climates in the country.
Right.
And this is just, they're working now to make this worse with paid leave.
Right, and there's nothing to prevent a business from instituting their own policy of paid leave.
Absolutely not. And my understanding is that 60% of all businesses in Rhode Island have a policy of paid leave.
Right.
So it becomes a question of whether it's affordable. It becomes also just a sort of infuriating situation where government is dictating compensation terms without regard, frankly, to reality. So it is in a couple of ways, it's just not a good thing that they are pursuing this and that it looks like it's going to pass.
Right, because in an open market, in a free market, companies who are in a position to afford it and afford it to their employees, then you get the salutary effect of quote unquote doing the right thing, but you also put yourself in a competitive advantage to getting the better employees.
Exactly.
So there's a free market mechanism in place for people to engage in that type of support for their employees if they are in a position to do so. But clearly, I mean, particularly if you're in a startup environment.
But what you're saying is so critical. I mean, because that's what we need. The state needs to be much more free market. And then the businesses bloom, and then they're fighting for workers, and they have to offer higher compensation to get the good workers, and then they can afford things like paid leave. But what's happened over the years is that there's just this stultifying anti-business atmosphere that has been fostered at the State House of too many taxes, too many we know better than you how to run your business, and that has completely sort of muffled the businesses. And what we need is much more free market principles.
Right. I'll always point out when it's even with the question of the minimum wage or when it's a question of any of these issues, I work up in the Boston area in the dreaded private sector, and as I like to say, every day I get up, I travel north with my few meager belongings to Massachusetts to do the work that people from Massachusetts won't do. But you don't have conversations about the minimum wage or employee benefits in Massachusetts because, quite frankly, as an employer, if you don't offer them, you can't hire anybody.
Right.
Because the environment in Boston is so dynamic financially. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy on a positive side, because then that's why you have companies like General Electric moving there and leaving failed high-tax states like Connecticut.
Indeed,
And
absolutely.
if there's any solace, by the way, folks, in our current state of Rhode Island, is that Connecticut is possibly, at this point, even worse off than we are. Hard to believe,
Such a sad statement.
but true. Okay, so that's one example. There was another couple.
So the carbon tax, the hike and increase of the minimum wage, the ending of employment at will, and they want to tax sugar and even criminalize it in terms of the companies themselves. I don't know the details of that, but I saw a summary of the bill that it imposes licensing for companies that sell or use sugar, and it actually criminalizes part of that, unbelievably.
Tony, we're screwed.
Here's my pitchfork.
Yeah. So those are examples of -3, some of the worst bills.
And the sugar bill, I'm kind of familiar with because we've got a wonderful local company called Yacht Club Soda.
Yes.
They were artisan soda before artisan soda was cool.
Exactly.
And I've met their owner, and again, I'm not going to pretend to speak for him, but when you artificially increase the cost of business in an isolated 3-border state like Rhode Island, because I understand they've also raised the cigarette tax, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Tax on cigarettes.
That's correct.
You make it. I mean, people who have money have choices.
Yes.
They can leave and they can go elsewhere.
Yes.
Whether it's the cigarette tax, where now people who have shops in places like Wooney and East Providence can now just go right over the border to Seekonk or Bellingham, or people will vote with their
Their wallets.
Yeah, I mean they can. I just had a guest on who was works for an energy firm that promotes, actually in a very free market way, the choice that you can make with your own pocketbook to absorb a higher mix of alternative energy into your own energy portfolio, if you will. I salute that because they're giving those people a choice.
Yes.
If you're an environmentalist and you're willing to vote with your pocketbook, then you've got a clear path to do so.
Mm-hmm. And I have no problem with that. I have no problem. If you want to set up and you want to buy, you want to willingly buy more green energy, oh my God, that's your choice. You go for it.
Right.
It's when government starts getting involved.
When you force the hand of people.
Exactly.
Now, in the case of this sugar tax,
Yes.
this is feel-good legislation gone mad.
Indeed.
It is not the purview of government to tell you what you should consume.
Correct.
It just simply isn't.
Nope.
And,
Nope.
whether it be a plant or sugar or we are free men and women. Now, again, I'll go off on a libertarian rant for a second. Remember, libertarians, we don't endorse a particular set of behavior. We say to you is you are a person of free will, a man or woman of free will, and you have the choice to make your own decisions. Mm-hmm. So when we artificially target industries, in the case of, for example, say Yacht Club soda, this is how you kill jobs. This is how you kill people's futures.
Absolutely.
And you send a clear signal to those who are entrepreneurs and those who are innovators that say, yeah, you probably shouldn't come here.
No, that's exactly right.
Because if you're willing to do that, then where are the boundaries?
No, there are none. That's the problem. And unfortunately, Rhode Island has demonstrated that for many, many years.
Right. Where this need to intervene in other people's lives.
Yes.
And people will say then, well, society through healthcare costs, society essentially is absorbing part of that. Well, then we need to rethink how we do healthcare.
Indeed.
And at the same time, what I don't understand about this sudden surge of moralism through government intervention is cigarettes. Of all people, and I'm no fan, but years ago, Rush Limbaugh came across with a great idea. He said, tobacco companies should go to a state, and to this, Rhode Island would be the ideal. And imagine if all the tobacco companies in Rhode Island said, you know what, you're right, we're terrible human beings. We're peddling this product, which is clearly endangering people's lives. You know what, we're out of here. We're done. It's clear you don't want us here, so bye-bye. We will no longer sell cigarettes in the state. What would that do to the state?
That would be a problem because that would create a very large revenue hole.
Right. Now, let's take another...
No, let's stop there because my understanding is that there are, when you buy a pack of cigarettes, you pay more in taxes than you pay for the product.
As someone whose life is filled with vices, it's the only one I've been able to avoid. All the other 7 sins, yeah, I'm way guilty. I embrace them all. But yeah, no, it's an astonishing amount of taxation.
Exactly, state and federal taxes. Yep.
Yep. Now let's take another industry in the state that perhaps the moralists should go after, and that, of course, is gambling. Why don't we just? Gambling
It's
is
bad.
Well, first of all, it's clearly predatory.
Yes. Seriously.
It targets a segment of the population that's a large segment of the population. Of course, I'm talking about with people with impaired math skills. But it is, and so I'm saying today, is it Representative Maldonado who was I believe the architect behind this tax? Correct? Please forgive me if I'm wrong. But let's kill gambling. No problem, right? That's
bad. It's
that's
bad.
the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let's kill the schmokes.
Yep.
Done.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're on a roll, no more booze.
Oh my God.
Tony, I think just passed out of that. Narragansett Brewery, we're just kidding. We desperately want you to be a sponsor. But think about it. This state largely survives on sin.
Exactly right. That's such a great point.
We
Yes.
which I'm kind of down with. But we, if, and forget the fact that clearly our state legislature doesn't run on Dunkin', they run on porn. But clearly, if you eliminated, all right, what would happen if we in this state took away smokes, booze, adult entertainment,
Gambling.
and gambling? Because if you're a fan of remember the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Are you a fan of
Yes,
that
oh,
movie?
yes, yep.
All right, because clearly we are Potterville. Rhode Island is absolutely Potterville. And for folks who haven't seen the movie, or may have only seen it once, of course, in the Jimmy Stewart dream sequence, the town, whatever falls the town is in his dream sequence becomes Potterville, where the evil banker is got gin mills and honky tonks and things like that. We are that here in Rhode Island. So our entire economy fundamentally rests on sleaze. Again, no problem with that. All right. But if we're going to be intellectually honest, dare I use those two words together in the same context with the fine folks in our state legislature, if we're going to be intellectually honest, where is this like death wish against those industries?
It's totally inconsistent.
Of
The
course.
whole thing is totally inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing left after that is tourism, and probably one could argue that a significant part of the tourism, the word legs and eggs is at least mentioned somewhere at one point in the conversation. So, I don't know. It's just disingenuous is probably the adult word to use.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they've gone after booze and smokes and tobacco. Now they're going after sugar. I mean, like it doesn't end. I mean, it's just going on and on. It's bad, but we're going to tax it and we're going to control your behavior. But we want the tax and
We want the money, and we're going to spend the money, and
right.
and where is the media calling BS on this?
No, I know. We need a lot more of that.
Was there another bill that?
No, those were the big ones.
Those are the big ones.
There are more.
That's enough?
But, yes, that's enough for now. That's enough.
That's
And
enough for now.
please visit, if I could.
Of course, please.
Thank you. www.gaspyproject.com to keep an eye on the scorecard and see how your legislator turns out in the scorecard, and please be sure to hold him accountable or her accountable for his or her vote.
What are other things on the horizon now? The center, and I know we got to be careful here to properly name and match the players.
Absolutely.
What's also on the horizon? What are the priorities, at least besides just trying to hold the line? And that would seem to be a major priority of any folks who believe in liberty in the state at this point is just to try and do no more harm.
Right. Exactly.
But are there initiatives coming up that you folks are championing, or?
Well, so to speak for the center at this point, we have had launched a major initiative called the Family Prosperity Index, which measures how the state treats the family.
Right.
So the Rhode Island is 45th, regrettably, nationally on the Family Prosperity Index, and there's a whole set of factors that factor into that. So that's something we're going to continue to hold the state, measure the state by and pursue, and even perhaps launch initiatives to try and improve the state's ranking on that. If I could, though, I'd also like to address, go back to the budget for a minute.
Sure, of course.
Thank you. So something just, that, and in fact, the lady who was talking about it, it's called scooping.
Right.
And this is where it's supposedly dedicated revenue. For example, in this case, we're talking about DMV fees, fees collected by National Grid, and then ongoing is the 9/11 fees. So what the state legislature does is, for example, the DMV collects fees, all these fees, some of which were increased in the past couple of years to repair our roads and bridges.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So they said, we have to raise your inspection fee, we have to raise your registration fee, and we're going to use that to repair your roads and bridges. Oh dear, this time they're not. They're grabbing a bunch of that revenue and they're putting it into the general fund. And the same thing with the National Grid fees that the lady was talking about. She was absolutely right about that. It's just completely dishonest. They ordered National Grid to collect these fees from all the ratepayers and to spend on certain programs, and now they've said, oops, we need that money. We're reaching in and we're grabbing. We're scooping that money for our use. And then right along the 9/11 program, where you call 911, there's a fee that's assessed on your telephone bill that is then collected to operate the 9/11, this whole 9/11 system. But they collect more than they actually. Not all of the money collected under the 9/11 fee line item actually goes to operate the 9/11. Some of it goes to the general fund, is my understanding. So this is a really duplicitous way of grabbing revenue by scooping it out of other budgets that's supposed to go for certain things, or if those DMV fees or the National Grid fees are not needed, okay, let's return them to the people. How about that? Why does that have to get collected and put into the general fund? Here's a crazy idea. If the fees are not needed by that organization, then let's return the fees to the people. Let's not collect as much fees. But no, they decided this is a sort of underhanded way of collecting more taxes so that they can then say, oh, no broad-based taxes increased this time. So that was a really, and in part, Representative Morgan has brought attention to that, and I think it's a really good point, because it's a very dishonest way to budget.
I'd like to make a motion, if you will, Counselor. I'd like to permanently eliminate the use of the word fees, because they are never fees.
Exactly.
They
right.
are taxes.
Exactly right. That's an excellent point.
Excellent point. They will never be fees. Fees, implicit in the term fee, is some type of user experience, and
yes,
it just simply doesn't exist, does it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You know, the total budget now, I've heard 9.2 billion.
That's correct.
All right. I was fortunate enough to be a guest on the Lively Experiment last week.
Oh, yay.
Mr. Hummel is very gracious in allowing kind of an outlier like me to come on occasionally. And the point I made then, I'd like to make right now. And this is actually a shout out to my friend Dan York, because this is an issue he's raised on more than a few occasions. And by the way, this type of show where we'll mention the other media people because we're not afraid to. But I'd like your interpretation of this. Is there anything in this budget at all, at any level, whether it be a new program, a tax cut, a funding issue, that speaks to any level of imagination or any sort of hallelujah moment that says we're going to fundamentally change how we do business, or we're going to take a new approach? Is there anything in this budget whatsoever that does that?
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, this is not a game changer. Excuse me, which is what Rhode Island needs. Rhode Island needs exactly what you're talking about, some sort of different way of thinking, a different approach to the whole state, to the business climate, to the taxpayers, and it seems to be notably lacking in this budget.
Right, and so yet another opportunity goes by with which to address the fundamental challenges the state faces. Because that's a real tragedy as well. You know, it's easy for us to get wrapped up over a particular issue, and I'm not going to diminish any of the issues that people brought up tonight because they're all critically important. But when you step back and try to big picture it,
it's so important to do that.
There's no rethinking, there's no reimagining.
No.
In marketing, the term is eat your young, or innovate or die. And the underlying concept of that is that you have to out innovate yourself before someone does it to you. You have to redefine yourselves before your competition defines you or redefines themselves and takes the next step advantage. There's none of that here.
No, there is not. And we have to remind everybody that Rhode Island has the 8th highest tax burden. I mean, I go down to basic numbers. We have the 8th highest tax burden. Nothing was done with this budget to mitigate that. In fact, we actually sort of went in the other direction, as a matter of fact.
We've done nothing to rethink how we educate our children.
No, so important.
Right. We're spending money on and there's a great story reported on Go Local Prob today about the what I'll call the diaper index. You need better grades to get diapers than you do to get our free education at CCRI. Someone that I'm proud to call a friend, Professor Stephen Ferleo, professor of English, journalism, and Shakespeare at the Community College of Rhode Island, who is another real warrior on behalf of his kids. He continues to challenge the central mission of CCRI. And what's so tragic about the educational system is that the kids going to CCRI are great kids.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They are great kids who, in many cases, are overcoming all sorts of obstacles to try and get a better education, to advance themselves. But we failed them. We are educated. We're taking this, trying to make some sort of political statement by providing this tuition incentive. But it's been well reported by a variety of sources and documented about the significant remedial effort that takes place at CCRI
Yes.
on a regular basis. So rather than again attempt to address the core issue, which of course is how we educate the little kids, the kiddos, we're going to pad our governor's resume effectively so that she can point out toward the media elsewhere, the one group of media that takes her seriously, that she's advanced free education. When, again, please tell me if I'm missing anything here. We've done nothing to address the core needs of a K-6 education in this budget.
No, that's absolutely right. That's where all the focus needs to be, is K-12 in the state. And the governor's free college tuition plan, I mean, it really infuriates me because it is, so she says, we need to have this because people need degrees to get jobs. Okay, if that's the case, why do thousands of people with college degrees leave the state of Rhode Island every year?
Right.
So, and the other thing is that it's just a degree. Well, if you talk to businesses around the state, they need specific skills, they need specific degrees. And there's been no attempt with her program to say, okay, what do our businesses in Rhode Island need, and let's focus the money on the degrees that they need. No, it's just this completely blind, broad-based statement. Let's give them a degree, not what do the businesses need, and we'll focus on that. And
right.
As you say, I mean, I've tried not to say this, but I can only come to the conclusion that it is solely to pad her political resume so she can put this on as an item on her resume. It is a completely ineffectual one. It does absolutely nothing to help anybody other than herself.
Right, because if our little kiddos are incapable of processing the skills necessary then to go to college or a vocational environment to get those skills, what have we accomplished? We've further cheapened the value of a CCRI degree,
yes.
Which is unfortunate because so many of these people work so hard to get it.
Right.
Right. We're doing them a disservice.
Yep.
And for a short-term political gain at significant expense to the taxpayer, while at the same time solving nothing.
Exactly, that's exactly right. I mean, I thought I saw a stat someplace where, I hate to even say this, but something like 80% of people, students at CCRI don't graduate within 2 years. There's some astonishingly high figure like that. So has she taken that into consideration? My understanding is no.
Nope.
So.
And as I mentioned to an earlier guest, Rick has become a political cesspool. Yeah, And Rick, there's a lot of wonderful things that go on at Rhode Island College, but unfortunately it has become, again, a political cesspool. There are all sorts of programs and hack jobs and being promoted there, and with little regard to the education of the students who are there. And students have noticed.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they see, what was the innovation director of that failed experiment.
Your innovations are.
Yeah, that was, located at the Center for, the Poverty Center, whatever
Yes.
they're calling themselves this year. That's been generated. That was generated at Rhode Island College, and a more personally self-serving group of people I've never seen because of the high proportion of their funding that actually goes to executive salaries there. I pointed that out.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. We've got a show coming up where we do our annual executive salary at the nonprofits. There's good money in helping the poor in the state. There's damn good money. I'm thinking of starting my own myself. Get me some federal funding.
Oh wow, I'm looking forward to that.
Right
show.
around the time of the UHIP scandal, one of the cooperatives in the state that simultaneously failed to be able to effectively deliver heating oil vouchers, and I won't mention their name on this show. I'll save that. But essentially, they act almost exclusively as a transfer agent. They take federal money from here and distribute it to people.
Right.
The executive director of that organization pays himself $170,000 a year, helping the poor.
Wow.
The examples are everywhere.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that show. Because
That's the one that I'm getting killed. Just, I'm checking the brake linings already this week, thanks to last week's lively experiment. I think I'm joking. But no, there's a lot of people who make a lot of money. And, I've taken great care to not include people like me, the ham and eggers of state government, because there's a lot of people who also work very hard.
Yes, oh yes.
Very, very hard, in a very dignified manner, and do their best to turn out a quality product.
Exactly.
But as we found out in the case of Mr. Montanaro this week, the state is rife with six-figure coat hanger jobs. Do we need to pay $156,000 a year to someone to head the operations of the General Assembly? No, we don't. I bet you there'd be a lot of people lining up at that job for 80 or 90. So when you look at the cumulative effect of the hyper expansion of the six-figure middle level management market, particularly orchestrated by Governor Raimondo, when you look at the economic effect of that, not only now, but if in fact these people are able to maintain some sort of benefit structure, 401k contract, whatever it is that's being done for these people in the future, the impact will be exponential.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I happened to do a little research in one particular area, and it struck me that in state government, especially under Governor Raimondo, sort of managers have blossomed, and there don't seem to be as many rank and file workers, which we really need the rank and file workers to actually do to provide the services that we need. And there's lots of really well-paid managers, and I'm not sure that that's good for the state.
No, because you look at the tragedy a few years ago. One of my favorite departments, of course, is the health department, where the former director of the health department suffered from what I call pandemic envy. We were on the top of every list of avian flu, disaster recovery, blah, 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 blah. But while
Wait, did you say pandemic envy?
Yeah, I used pandemic envy. He was, to coin a phrase.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we were participating in every known symposium drill on bird flu and this flu and, every.
Once it sounds like government run amok again. Is
Well,
what it
no,
sounds like to me.
Absolutely, but you can think back a few years ago, we also had people die,
Yes.
literally die at a local bakery and they hadn't had health inspectors there in a few years. Now, I'm as small a government as anybody, more so than most, but if you're going to have a health department, how about mixing in some health inspectors in the mix?
Yes.
Call me crazy. We
all agree on that. Let me say for the record, we all agree.
But that's the problem. The caseload for social workers in the state, the department, the organization supporting children, it's not the individual caseworker that's causing these tragedies or creating an environment where these tragedies go. It's this obsession with middle-level management, six-figure jobs, that's taking money directly from the taxpayer and not supporting, as you put it so aptly, the rank-and-file worker who actually goes out there and does the damn work.
Exactly right.
We continue to have this champagne budget for the thinkers, the vision people, the visionaries, the big idea people, but no one does a damn thing.
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, what do you say after a while? It's disheartening, but if there's any change taking place, I think what you're starting to see is people who are activists from across the aisle, and the whole, I'll engage in shameless self-promotion for a moment here. The whole purpose of the show is an evening like tonight, where you had three very powerful women who are very active in the community in very different capacities, but at the same time spearheading issues that they believe in, that to really core issues to them, who have found agreement on significant issues tonight.
Yes.
And so, in that respect, if this show, in its own tiny little way, can provide and encourage, or create a format or a petri dish, if you will, where folks with different political belief systems, but rather than focus on that, focus on the commonalities that we have, and scooping is a perfect example of that tonight, then there's hope to go forward.
Yes.
And we all need to start really gearing up, because the next set of elections of a lifetime are starting to happen now.
Absolutely correct. 2018 is closer than you think.
Right. And do we continue to, or do we re-elect a governor who clearly has shown an organic level of disdain for people in the community of all types, I mean, all political beliefs, of all economic and social economic backgrounds? Do we do that, or do we look for change? Do we elect a governor whose Economic Development Corporation or Commerce Corporation or whatever the hell they're calling it right now, just elected to give a politically connected landlord in this town millions of dollars of loans again? And, from someone who should know better. We've got fundamental agreement that the crony corporatism in the state has to end. and it has to end soon
Absolutely.
because of the real impact on people's lives. Now you say, what is that? We're sponsoring all these businesses. Well, you've got the community, you've got the folks in the progressive community frustrated about the cost of affordable or the lack of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's perform a basic economic intervention here, Monique. If the state continues to artificially subsidize the manufacture and production or conversion, if you will, of high-income housing, and you're using those subsidies to artificially weight the market towards that, then simultaneously those subsidies are working against the free market responding to a genuine need in the community, which is more reasonably priced housing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, I figured that out all by my little own. It's really that simple, isn't it?
Yes, no, that's exactly right.
Eliminate subsidies for luxury housing, and then the market will respond to the demonstrated need for middle income and what's called affordable housing.
That's exactly right. And people who don't watch politics as closely as we do, a man said to me, wait a minute, we're handing corporate subsidies for real estate deals? Like, he was astonished that it's such a bad, that the government should not in any way be handing out corporate subsidies to real estate whatsoever. I mean, you choose something else maybe, but not for real estate.
Right, we are faced with a multi-million-dollar loan being approved by the Raimondo administration, who claims to be a progressive Democrat, by the way, and I know some of my progressive friends just literally threw up in their Wheaties, but the ultimate politically connected landlord who is going to convert stock downtown here into a luxury hotel. Now, if he wants to build a luxury hotel, just like the folks who want to build a luxury baseball stadium with their own money, okay, knock yourself out.
Exactly.
And I wish you nothing but success.
Yep.
But this insistence on being welfare recipients, you've got this guy, McNally, who's on the Commerce Corporation board, who is the chairman of a very large international construction company called Skanska. And when I challenged him and called him a redistributor of income, he was, I'm not that, I'm a Republican. Well, you may not be giving it to the lower income, as that's traditionally what you associate income redistribution with it. You're taking income and redistributing it to the politically connected 1%.
That's right.
What's the difference? Each of them profoundly impact the local economy, destroy free market forces. And here's a guy who, according to reporting, in the meeting, I guess it was yesterday, of the Commerce Corporation to approve this subsidy to this local real estate developer, actually asked the question, if this fails, will taxpayers be on the hook for the money? And when he was told yes, and still voted for it anyway.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
This is a gentleman who was the CEO of a multinational construction company. I don't know, sport. I don't know what to tell you.
But he was. My understanding is that he was chosen to be on the Commerce Corporation by Governor Raimondo. So these are not the sort of. This is not the sort of values and principles that we need guiding the governor's office and the Commerce Corporation. This is a bad choice.
Right, and quite frankly, the Commerce Corporation needs to go away.
Thank you.
Let's just say there's absolutely no reason for its existence. No. They have a demonstrated generational record of failure.
I just want to say, for the record, the center years ago called for then the EDC, now the Commerce Corporation, to be completely defunded.
Right.
That's what needs to happen.
Done. I mean, there's absolutely no reason for them to exist.
No, absolutely not.
Any services that they allegedly provide are clearly available in the free market at individual expense.
That's exactly right.
And should not be a taxpayer expense.
No, absolutely not.
And by the way, I'm speaking for folks on behalf of middle income and lower income folks. Why should their tax dollars, because they do pay taxes, they pay sales taxes, they pay lots of different taxes, why should their tax dollars be spent to create subsidies for the politically connected that have never worked at any level?
No, absolutely not. And we are assured by officials at the Commerce Corporation, those companies don't get those tax credits until they've created the jobs. Okay, but there's actual real spending that comes out of the current budget. Very real money comes out of the current budget. So I don't feel better about that. I don't want any of that spending. All that spending needs to go away.
Right, and the fallacy that they're creating jobs. Businesses are not set up to create jobs. Businesses are not established to create jobs.
Ooh.
Businesses are established for one sole purpose, and that is for the profit of the owners.
This is heresy, Pat.
I know. Hey, this class, Tony, this class shatterproof?
Not bulletproof.
All I know is, listen, Monique, I love you, but when that little red dot comes through the window, I'm diving, okay? Businesses don't exist for the creation of jobs. That is, to use the almost abused word on Smith Hill this year, an ancillary benefit if in fact it occurs. The notion that economic development funds would be channeled and artificially create pressure to create jobs is exactly one of the reasons 38 studios failed, because of their need to generate compensation, which serves as a drain on their cash flow, which accelerated their burn rate, which ultimately contributed in part to their demise.
That is exactly right.
So
That's exactly right.
we're using political expediency as an economic tool, utilizing funds provided by and stolen from, because, by the way, for the record, I have to say on every show, taxation is in fact theft, all right? Stolen from the taxpayer without consent at the end of a gun, all right? And redistributed to people who clearly are being motivated by ulterior, non-productive economic factors.
That's exactly right.
It's pretty obvious. Until we accept that, we are continued to be doomed to double down on failure.
No, that's exactly right. Now, I am pleased that the House cut back the amount of the corporate subsidies this year, but they needed to be zero. They
Right.
needed to be zero.
Zero, in the words of the immortal and one of my personal heroes, Dean Wormer, 0.0.
Exactly.
Monique, thank you so much for coming in here
Thank you
again.
for having me,
And
Pat.
it was
It was great.
Wonderful evening. And again,
So please visit
yep,
Gaspee.
shameless plug time.
Thank you. So for the Gatsby Project, GatsbyProject.com, and for the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, rifreedom.org.
All right.
Thank you.
Folks, you've been listening to the Coalition. Joining us in our last segment today was Monique Chartier. As I like to refer to her as the goddess of all acronyms. She is involved with just about every single organization that works to protect and to serve the taxpayer of the state imaginable. And as a result, she is someone clearly who takes it personally. You're one of my heroes.
Thank
God
you,
bless
Pat.
you.
Thank you so much.
You'll be back on again soon.